Dr. Nnamdi Ikpeze, you have the floor.
Thank you for this opportunity. It is my privilege to be here. We're speaking on a very sensitive topic today, and it's absolutely interesting area, given the rise in the levels of awareness of this societal problem. I'm very proud to partake in this discussion, which I hope together with the efforts of other people and organizations will help make the world a better place for women in Nigeria. Rape is widespread in Nigeria. From the data reeled out by Professor Folayan, I don't need to cite other aspects of the research I carried out, but essentially it violates the body of other human beings, especially the female gender, and it is such a special problem because of the negative effects, such as its effects on transmission of HIV, drugs, suicides, and the lifelong nature of its effects on its victims and survivors. So the role of the nation and its legislative and enforcement apparatus cannot be overestimated. The entire framework of law enforcement must come together to tackle this menace. So what is the best way going forward? I am looking at this from the perspective of the legal framework around it, arrests, prosecutions, burden of proof, the requirements, medical evidence, other extrinsic rules, Given that rape is a non-consensual sexual intercourse that is not limited to a particular gender anyway, but is very similar to sexual assault, we have to look at the laws that are right now present in Nigeria to deal with rape. So what I want to focus on essentially is the legal framework around it. And that consists of the criminal code, which is applicable in the South, the penal code, which is applicable in the North, the criminal laws of Lagos State, the FAP Act, Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, and the Child Rights Act. So in the criminal code and the penal code, there's different requirements. The criminal code is more related to the laws in Lagos. The VAP Act is the most modern, and the Child's Rights Act gives what seems to be adequate protection to the children. But when you now go through incidents that have been recorded in the states, I took my time to find out some information about what has been happening. When it comes to law enforcement, the problem is not the absence of the laws, it's not the absence of legislation. The first problem I identified is the role of the first responders, the police. On January 27, this 2020, a Nigerian lawyer, Goodness Ibanga, had accompanied a 21-year-old woman to file a rape report at Enugu State Area Command. And a lot of pressure came from the police to withdraw the case, the complaint, and settle outside the criminal justice system. Ibanga resisted the entreaties of the police, and in return, on the 30th of January, the police raided the office of the Women's Aid Collective, where Ibanga worked, and attacked her in a most shockingly unprofessional criminal way, in violation of the very rights which the police is charged with protecting. So this is an example of police endorsing violence against women, rape, which, on the other hand, they should be combating. So the hostility that comes from the law enforcement aspect is something that poses a problem, in addition to the problem of to the pandemic of rape. So if you look around the country, everywhere from priests to Muslim clerics and pastors and even law enforcement officers themselves, some time ago, 2 years ago in Abuja, when the police was sent to rid the streets of prostitutes, eventually some of the so-called alleged prostitutes complained that they were raped by the policemen. Teachers heard the story of the Christland School and the one that happened in March in Lagos too, where in Ogun, where a secondary school teacher defiled a 14-year-old. So this is a crime that cuts across board. It's not a crime that you can say a particular group of people in the society or people of a particular status have not been committing it. What we are looking at now is, like the last speaker identified, the problem of enforcement. So the conundrum is how can the state deploy effective law and policy, and how law and policy interact to improve the situation. For me, law shapes policy and policy shapes law. So I have identified 5 policies that can improve the situation. And first of all, we have to set targets. What is the target? Increased efficacy of law enforcement mechanism against sexual offenses, especially rape, because legislation is not effective if the law enforcement mechanism is not efficient. For instance, in Nigeria, generally, like in the South, the law provides for life sentence for rape, but you find out that many people who are found guilty of the offense go away with light sentences, in quotes. You know why? Because of the discretion which the magistrates and the judges have not to always impose the maximum sentence. Again, we have to look at timing. How long does it take to gather the medical evidence that is required sometimes to prove the offense? How long does a trial last? How quickly is investigation conducted? There should be a timeline for investigation and prosecution. In the next 5 years, for instance, what progress do we need to make as a country in this regard? So let's translate long-term actions into short-term actions, and then we'll see that there will be improvement, at least on the law enforcement side. Now, when we talk about targets, we should support our targets with law and action. The example of Ekiti State that has created a sex offenders register should be emulated by all states and the FCT. Again, who are the decision makers and how relevant are the targets to the decision makers? The targets should be relevant to all decision makers. A situation where the police try to settle rape cases out of the due process of law without investigation and prosecution is not acceptable. The situation of the lawyer in Enugu that I had earlier mentioned comes to mind. Where does the authority of the police end? What is the obligation of the police to effectively investigate and prosecute rape cases? I am certain that a quick survey of all police formations will reveal that most of the first responders feel no obligation to pursue rape cases to a logical conclusion in most cases, and that cannot be right. It is a question of legal design. You know, we have to, maybe together with the ministries of justice in the states and the federal ministry of justice, design this first responders authority, you know, not extend to a certain aspect. So finally, again, we can see that this is a contemporary issue now because information is available now more than ever before. So finally, I'll say that information and analysis is another aspect we have to look at. I'm not sure that enough work is going on in this respect. More work should be done to capture the data and analyze such data, and this should be converted into monitoring and also analysis of policy. Thank you very much.